Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey Podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey Podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoltmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Active Turnkey Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Stoltmeister, and I have with me two guys. I have with me the Tom Olson. That's me. That's Tom. And then I also have with us Jerry Padilla. The Jerry Padilla.
That's me.
Padilla. Yeah. Do you go by the Jerry Padilla?
I do not go by the
Okay.
Jerry.
Maybe you should. Maybe you should, Jerry. So, I don't know. It works for Tom.
So, and Jerry's coming at you from
Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York. I knew it was New York, so I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't know. I thought it was Buffalo, but they're kind of close to each other.
They are. It's only about an hour and 20 minutes away. So,
well, Tom's from that area, so he knows all about it. He was going to start name dropping and talking about all different kinds of places.
Originally, I'm from Jamestown, New York, which is about a half an hour the other direction from Buffalo. And but actually, it's interesting how we met. We actually met from a Bigger Pockets from a post at one point. This is probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And then Jerry was a part of our Good Success Mastermind for a while, and he's helped a lot of our buyers from the turnkeys over throughout the years get deals and be able to get lending on their deals. And I think you're with Prime Lending. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So you're still with Prime Lending.
Yeah, 5 years now.
And Jerry's he's not just a lender, he's just an all-around good guy and somebody that you'd want to develop a relationship with for time to come. So partly why we chose him as one of our preferred lenders in our lender network. But also he's on today. And what are we going to talk about today, Jared?
Well, today we're going to talk about the state of the union when it comes to lending. So it's going to be pretty important, pretty big. I mean, this is a pretty big,
the state of the union as it pertains to lending.
Right.
For rentals.
Yeah. And this is a big platform for Jerry. I mean, this is
huge.
This is big league stuff we're talking about for sure. Before I get into it though, I will say, Jerry, I'm doing deals right now with Jerry. So like my dad built up his portfolio and he's helped us on some. We just refinanced and we got another one we're going to be doing here in just about 2 weeks.
Awesome.
And so not only does he do stuff for our clients and our buyers, but I use him as well. And he's taking
that sounds like a commercial, Jared.
It does.
I'm not only here as I'm also a client.
Yeah. No, Jerry pulls for you. He you're going to talk right to him. Now I will say, Jerry, you picked up a superstar. Melissa's awesome.
She is. She's amazing.
She is great. I just want to say it. She makes you look really good.
She does, and she does a great job. And I mean, with her being in the system and how she handles things, it makes my life a lot smoother. So
good. Oh, she just does.
Is she looking for a job?
Yeah. No kidding. I already asked her, and she said she's good for now. No, she's great and really helps the communication side of things with Jerry, and that's good. So, all right, Jerry. So, first of all, before we get into, give us a brief bio. Tell us about yourself, how you got into lending, all that kind of stuff, all the good stuff that you're used to talking about, and then we can get into some more nitty gritty stuff.
So, gosh, yeah, it's been 15 years since I got into the lending industry, and getting into the industry was done by mistake. It wasn't done by design. So I actually used to work in the retail sector of the business, and I was in retail management for a while and got laid off. And so had a good friend of mine that was in the mortgage business, gave me an opportunity to come with him. And here we are now, still in the mortgage business, doing the lending side of things for investors. As I've been doing that as a focus for probably about 10 years now.
Awesome.
I think that's important too. Like when you mentioned as a focus, like I think it's one thing to just go to somebody that can do an investor loan, but it's a whole nother thing to find somebody who actually, this is the type of loans that they do, because it's a completely different type of loan from retail buyer to like an actual turnkey, rental or even just any kind of rental period. And having somebody in your court that understands what you need, and tries to make this process as simple as possible. Is like, it's actually hard to find. It's a lot harder to find than you would think it is out there. But when you find somebody that's good, you want to, hold on to them. So sorry for interrupting there, but I just figured I'd give you a little bit of kudos there. And, the focus that people like you have, like yourself has, like on this specific niche of rentals, I think is something that it's awesome to find. And you do a good job for us.
And it has been a focus that some of my investors think that that's the only type of loan I could do for them. And I have to let them know that I could do all loans. It's just that I put the focus in the investment side of it, just because, like Tom said, it's a different world. Just because it's the same guidelines as a regular loan, they look at things and view things differently with investment properties. So if you don't understand how that nuance works, then you're going to get a deal denied because you're not presenting it properly. And it's always how you present the deal to the underwriter will determine if they're going to have any issues with it. And it doesn't make a difference.
That's huge. And I've seen that on my side from working with Jerry on two fronts. So, Tom mentioned it, you do loans. And so, this is like the most painful part to buying a property is the lending side, especially if you're doing turnkey. Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, even if you're doing active turnkey, it can all be painful. So to have somebody who's like kind of bringing it down to your level, hey, this is all you need. It's cool. We got this, and kind of walk you through it patiently. And so that's good. For sure. And then like you said before, just having those different options, it's pretty cool to have that kind of teamwork. Yeah.
I mean, we do our best to try to make sure that we get as much upfront from the investor. So that way, when it goes to underwriting, it's coming out clear to close. I mean, we've had more files recently coming out clear to close than we have had in the past. And I mean, we're not talking about new investors. We're talking about existing investors that already have 9 finance properties and coming out clear to close. So it's just, we've gotten a solid grasp on what's needed up front and presenting that information to the underwriter. And so they're happy with the results because they don't have to worry about conditioning for multiple different things because we've already addressed it before they even saw it.
Yeah, that's huge. So we're kind of like in the middle of August here, 2022, and things are a little bit different probably in the mortgage industry as they were maybe say 8 or 9 months ago. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because like from my perspective, I've looked at the different rates, and it actually seems like the investor loans haven't gone up as much as like the retail loans have comparatively. Like they might be still a little higher than a regular buyer that's going to live in their own property, but I don't feel like they've gone up as much as a percentage, so to speak, as like the retail. I mean, retail loans were going for 2.9, 3.9. Now all of a sudden they moved to 6, and now they kind of backed off a little bit. But, I think most of investor loans were probably in those 5s, and they've kind of creeped up into the, 6s, 7s, maybe even some 8s from here and there. Give us a little bit about, your perspective and how things are at right now from an investor that wants to get, lending right now.
It may seem like it didn't have an increase in the rates on the investor side of it, but it did. I mean, because if I go back to, let's say, beginning of April, I was still able to get an investor mid-4s with no points. And then the end of April happened, and that's when everything hit the fan. So you started seeing that the rates were going up in the beginning of May, and then throughout the May, they kept on creeping up. And then once we hit June, that's when things went through the roof and where the market just kind of started getting out of control. And it has a lot to do with what's going on in the industry. And so when we had that initial rate hike for the prime rate in May's meetings, that really put an uproar to the mortgage industry rates because of the outcome that was coming from those meetings. Not necessarily the increase in the prime rate, but the fact of the sense of insecurity as they had with the outlook on the economy. So when you're having that from the Fed result meetings, that's what's caused the skyrocket, and
No,
it caused a
I'm not
huge.
saying that the rates haven't gone up. They have. That's not what I meant. What I was trying to say is I don't feel like they've gone up as much as a percentage as like some of the retail rates have. So a retail buyer now, I think, is hurting a lot more, so to speak, than maybe a turnkey buyer or somebody that's going to buy a rental, as a difference of what their monthly payment actually is, from say April till today. There's not as much of a difference. Does that make sense? Because when you're talking like 3s to 6s, that's like doubling.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're at 9s right now. So it seems like, so what are the rates now for, a good, 640, 740 type borrower for investment loans?
So the magic number is 740. So that's where an investor wants to be, is a 740 credit score. And in today's market, there is no 0-point rate options, but you can get down to like 6 1/8, depending on the down payment, and there'll still be about a point and a half cost on that. So we're not in a current market where we could offer 0-point rates, but being at 6 1/8, it's still not a bad deal, and it's not killing cash flow as much as people think it is. Because
Right.
when the rates went up, investors just got afraid and they stopped looking and stopped buying. And so it was putting them in a position where they were not wanting to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start talking to them and saying, always examine the deal based off of the cash flow, not off of the interest rate.
So you're saying you're at
that's when
6 and what, an 8? You said 6 1/4.
6 1/8, so 6.125.
Right. So that's basically kind of what I was saying. Like, so if you're at 6 1/8, 6 1/4, the difference between 4.5 or 4 7/8 or whatever you were and 6 1/8 is only 1.5 percentage points.
Mm-hmm.
The difference in a retail buyer going from 2.9s, 3.5s to then like 6 or 5.5, that's a much larger difference. That's what I was trying to, hit, come at that from. And really, historically, I mean, what's the average over the last 20 years? I mean, it's probably in the 6s for investors, right? I mean, that's pretty much where we've been for the last 20 years. We've skipped around it, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower at times, but 6s is pretty standard for investors that have any kind of experience.
Well, and I mean, if you look at the overall interest rate in general, it's still in the mid 6s is the average. So we're still below the average interest rates of the history of mortgage rates. So, I mean, we have been. I mean, I remember when I first started doing investment loans, we were at 6.5 all day long. It was a common thing, and investors were still able to make cash flow. And that was back then when the rental rates were even lower. So the rates are even much higher now. So your cash flow is even better. So
what do you say to somebody then who would come to you and either they're like you said, pausing, or they're not starting? So he's like a brand new investor and they assess it. And, a common thing I've heard over the years, whether it be, appreciation or interest rates, is, I've missed the boat on investing. When you hear that, which I'm sure you do, once people start kicking out rates, what would you say to them, or what do you say to them?
So when somebody says that they've missed the boat or they're wishy-washy on what they want to do, then it goes back to them and asking the question, what's more important to you? Is cash flow more important to you, an interest rate, or appreciation of the property? And majority of the time, especially new investors, are going to say cash flow. So if cash flow is important to you, then why are you focusing on interest rate? So if the cash flow is there with where the rates are at today, and you're still getting your money, what does it matter on the interest rate? Because the reality is you're going to get appreciation. The rates could go back down again. You could refinance, get more equity out of the house at a lower rate, and still keep maybe your expenses the same and increase your cash flow. So that's where I tell people, you look to marry the house and date the rate, because you could always change the rate. But if the cash flow of the property is going to be there, then why wait?
I like that.
Hey,
I
that
haven't-
rhymes.
I haven't heard that before. Marry the house and date the rate. That's cool. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to make that like our new slogan. What do you think?
So what are you seeing right now as far as volume goes, as far as like, what is your investor sentiment right now overall? I know consumer confidence overall in the economy probably isn't good, but from what I'm hearing, honestly, like there's a lot of highly qualified investors that still they have a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines right now. And there's a lot of people that, I mean, our buyers are buying like as soon as we send them a deal, I think they're fighting over them right now, maybe worse than they have in a while. But it's interesting to me. There's a lot of like this recession is a little bit different than we've had before because you have a lot of cash, which normally isn't the case. Unemployment is not going up like normally you have in a recession. And so the rates went up a little bit. I mean, obviously, my own personal opinion is that the inflation doesn't have much to do with rates, and I don't think that raising rates is actually going to change inflation at all. What they need to focus on is supply chains, which is probably hurt stuff more, and getting rid of moratoriums on rentals. I actually think if there's been anything that has exacerbated this problem, it's been the moratoriums for the rentals. Like what they don't realize they've done is they sucked up all the supply and now there's no supply. And then when there's any supply, well, what happens? There's still demand, and the demand says, I'm going to be willing to pay way more now because there's less rental properties available and people have more cash. So like you put all those things together and no wonder, the prices on everything are going up. My food is its own, thing. I won't touch that, but a lot of that has to do with war. Oil is obviously an issue. Part of that's war, part of that's just stupidity in Washington. But when it comes to like, interest rates, like they're going to go up and down. Like it's not something that stays constant. We have to be, able to, just navigate that throughout the years. But what are you seeing? Like, what are your investors telling you? I'd love to just kind of hear from a lender's perspective, like what are you seeing?
So, I mean, I saw investors back off in June and July timeframe. They were just not wanting to do nothing and hesitant and just kind of want to see what's going to happen. And then it wasn't until mid-July that they started realizing we're not going to be changing from this rate hike anytime soon. So they started actually wanting to invest back into deals again and start looking into buying. And I see them being actively searching again because we always follow up with our investors that are actively looking, and they all kind of went dark on me for about a month or so, and they just weren't looking for anything. And then now I'm seeing them coming back and say, yeah, we're back on market looking for property and trying to find property. And they're seeing that the rate cost of the property is a little bit higher now because we're running into what you said earlier, is that people have cash and they're willing to pay more for it now. And I'm seeing that throughout the nation. It's just not in my local market, just throughout the nation. I'm seeing that people are willing to pay more for property.
Yeah, we kind of saw the same thing. I mean, it was like, it kind of almost seemed like people went dead for at least 2 weeks. They were like, the showings even on retail stuff went dead. And then it kind of slowly started to trickle in a little bit. And that kind of happened like 3 months ago. And it was like, I think we had a week, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where we sold like 4 or 5 properties all that same week on retail. So we're definitely seeing that in the retail market. And it's interesting that you're seeing that also on the investor side as well, where it's kind of like people have just now decided to face reality and say, hey, what is this? This is what we're going to do. We're going to operate in which the new guidelines that we have to operate. And like you said, just focus on, hey, if the deal works, the deal works. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's funny because I had an investor that we actually both work with mutually, and it's probably been like 8 years that we've been working with each other. And he's like, I'm concerned about the rates. I don't know if I should be doing something. And then I said, hey, man, let's take it back when we first started the relationship and take a look at what you were paying back then. I was like, you were paying 5.5, 6.5 on those deals and had no issues with the cash flow of those properties. And you still have those properties. They're still cash flowing today till this day. So the rates not being where they were versus where they're at now, that's not really make a difference on your cash flow as much, because we're not talking $300,000-$400,000 properties. We're talking 150 or less. So when you're taking a look at a difference in a payment between a 4% interest rate versus a 6% interest rate, it's not killing your cash flow. It's like, you got a good point.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then
go ahead.
And then within a couple of weeks, he decided to pull the trigger on a deal and bought a deal, but he had been staying on the sidelines because he wasn't sure if he wanted to do it because of where the rates were at.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, now we're starting to move forward on it because they've closed on it. But I've seen that a lot. I mean, this is a seasoned investor. This is not a brand new investor. This is somebody who's been doing it for quite some time. And he just felt that it was concerning to him. But then that's when I said, you buy the house for the cash flow. When the rates go back down, refinance it. Pull out more equity and keep on doing the same process.
Yeah, it's interesting, like how much even a seasoned investor changes what they do based on what the headlines say and based on what the media is telling them to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's why sometimes it's so important to kind of keep your eyes away from that, kind of stay in the clouds a little bit and just try to focus on. And that's kind of something that we even had to do in our own business. We had to kind of get away from all the dust and get away from all the clutter and all the media and just say, okay, what do we know works? Like, what are the fundamentals of our business? And that's kind of what we decided to go back to. Hey, let's get back to the fundamentals of our business. And as long as the deal does this, it makes sense for us. We're moving forward. We're going to buy as many of these deals as we possibly can buy. And I think once people face reality, and I think it does, there's a little bit of wisdom sometimes in a pause to kind of just see what the new boundaries are and what the new bearings are.
Yeah.
One point you brought up that I love for you to touch on, what do you think? And I know this is a crystal ball, but you brought it up. So you said once rates go back down. So, I mean, in my mind, that means that you're already thinking that at some point rates are going to go back down. And is that the sentiment that you kind of hear with, the different, bankers and the different, the people that you deal with from the prime lending space or other mortgage brokers that you deal with or talk to? Is that kind of the sentiment that you kind of all agree with? Because I mean, it's kind of what I think. And if you even look at what the Fed has given as guidance, like they kind of want to get to 3.75 by the end of the year, Fed rate. And then they want, to kind of slowly, back that down, maybe 25%, increments. But really at the end of next year, they're still thinking they're going to be like, 275 or something like that. So it's not going to go down super fast, but there is a little bit of a softening that they're expecting with their guidance that they've given. So just give us some information or some insider information on that if you can.
So it's not necessarily insider information. It's just me paying attention to the trends that I've seen since I've been in the business, and giving the circumstances as to why the rates went up. It's a little bit different than what it's done in the past. I mean, the reason for the increase in rates is really, in my opinion, and I could be wrong on this aspect, but COVID is the cause of where we're at today, because now we're having to pay back all these stimulus packages because somebody had to pay for that money. And so that's what they're trying to do to increase the rates. And so, as you said earlier, once the dust settles, you'll see that they'll go down. How long is it going to take? I don't know. It could take a year, it could take 2 years, it could take 3 years before them go back down. But I do see them going back down again, just because that's been a consistent trend for the last 15 years that I've been in the business, where they go up and they go back down. And it just kept on going in a direction where it was going more down than it was up. But in this market, it's a little bit different. It's when I first started the business, I never saw these big swings like you see today. And it's because of the access of information today versus then. I mean, you wouldn't get instant access of info if you didn't know how to get it. You wouldn't find it, because you didn't have your instant social media or your instant platforms that gave you data immediately.
Yeah. definitely something to keep paying attention to. I think there is like some wisdom in understanding that, 0% Fed rates is not a good thing. That means that they are trying to stimulate and investment, and they don't think that there's enough confidence to for investors to actually invest and make things happen without those artificially low interest rates. So I mean, that's my opinion. That's what most economic, people would say, that, and you have to almost have that margin. Without that margin of somewhere to go, then you're into negative interest rates, and then you're into Japan for the last 20 years, and that's not where we really want to be either. So now that we actually have, I think they're giving themselves a little bit of margin, which I don't even think is a bad thing, and it's proving that we can still operate with those higher interest rates. So we'll see. So again, other than that, what else are you seeing right now? Anything new or anything different, or anything that you guys offer that's a little bit different than products you've offered in the past? But what else is going on that's new in the investment world from your perspective?
Nothing new in the investment world. I mean, you're starting to see more of the portfolio lenders wanting to offer the debt servicing ratio loans, and now more than in the past.
You're seeing a lot more of the DSCR loans as well come out.
Yeah, so there's more accessibility to them now than there was in the past, but I do see that they're becoming more stricter than conventional. So that's something that is kind of surprising. So, like, as a quick example, if you want to do a cash out with a DSCR loan, you have to wait a year to own the property to get full market value, where depending on circumstances, it's anywhere from 0 days to 6 months with conventional. So it kind of depends on how much increase from the purchase price to the market value will determine how long you need to wait.
Interesting.
One thing I've noticed is speed of late. So it seems like to me, and you can, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was the pause we talked about, and then all of a sudden everything was fast. I noticed appraisers getting appraisals back in a couple days, as like from the time they're contacted, from the time they're out to the time that they get it in is like 3 to 4 days in some cases. And then even for you guys recently, you guys got a file and closed it in around 21 days, which is pretty fast. That's pretty fast service. So I mean, is that something you're seeing across the board? What are you seeing, and is it just volume, or what would cause that to happen?
So, couple of things that caused that to happen, in my opinion, is when 2020 happened and those rates were really low. The increase in volume that happened that was so dramatic had the appraisers working overtime and working double, and the title companies working double, and the underwriters working double. So they got used to having to manage such high pipelines. And then when the rates went down, or went up in middle of this year, the volume dropped. So you had some companies just started letting go of people left and right, and then you had other companies that let's go ride this out. So I think now you have the sense of urgency. Let's get this things done, so that way when we get back to more of a stabilized mortgage industry, it's still continually running productively. Because I mean, right now I could submit a file in the morning and I'm getting approval in the afternoon.
Wow.
And depending on how clean the file is, it's either early afternoon or late afternoon, but we're getting 24-hour commitments when we're submitting the files. And then the other things that we're doing a little bit different than we've done in the past is we're waiting for the appraisals to come back, because they're coming back so quickly now. So we could wait into submit it in underwriting with an appraisal, and then we're coming back clear to close, and we don't have to wait for any other conditions.
Wow.
So I think the amount of volume that we used to have helped to train people to work faster. And then when the volume dropped, I think it got people to realize, hey, we need to make sure that we're doing a better job of this so that we don't lose our jobs. I think that was part of it. And the other part is could this influx in volume happen again? I don't know if it will again happen like it did in 2020 and 2021, but it, it definitely allowed us to manage our pipeline a little bit more because we had to learn so much different ways to push volume through when we were doing crazy amount of volume.
So is it really that big of a drastic difference, between now and 8 months ago? Or did you just kind of clear everything off your books, and now that you're kind of starting with a fresh start, it's easier to get things done?
I think it's a combination of both. So that we were able to get all that volume closed out that was rapidly being produced. And the fact that we have a fresh slate, the underwriters are becoming more quicker because they were underwriting, I think, like 10 files a day, and now maybe they're underwriting 2 or 3 files a day. So having that do so much volume at once kind of gets you to become more efficient. And now that we're not as busy, I think it's caused things to be a lot more smoother in today's market because of what we had to endure for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been just completely obvious as far as the turn rate. I think I can think of maybe one appraiser in the last month, maybe 6 weeks, that was not able to go to a property that week they got the file. I mean, it just normally, recently it was like a 2-week wait time just to get them in the door of the property. But like I said, just one recently, I think it was the following week or something. But recently, we had one situation where they got the file on a Friday and the appraisal was back Tuesday with the lender. It's just crazy. So it's definitely good if you're an investor and you like to see your money moving and you don't like it burning a hole in your pocket. That's always a good sign. To get that closing timetable under 30 days is pretty impressive.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, it's good for the investors that, have the capital, that are ready to invest right now, be able to get these things done a little quicker and probably maybe a little bit less painful than it seems like it has been.
Yeah.
And we're grateful. It's obviously telling though as well that, there is less volume happening. And it's always funny to me that when that happens, it seems like everybody wants to follow that trend. And what they don't realize is, like, a lot of times that's the time where you do want to be investing. That's the time that you do, those deals happen. And even for us, it's interesting because now we're able to get deals that we weren't able to get before. And now we're able to offer them to our investors at a price that makes sense to our investor. Right. And a lot of the houses that we were selling, last year, we were having to go retail because they were selling for literally $50,000 more retail than they were selling for to our turnkey buyers. And we knew it didn't make sense, to sell those properties. I mean, we probably actually had turnkey buyers that would pay retail prices for them, but we didn't believe it made sense for them. So we were purposely trying to go on the retail side of things, for that period of time. And now it's kind of like, now we're back to our sweet spot. We're back to our bread and butter. We can get those properties for under $150,000 that are renting for those, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 a month. And those are properties that everybody's looking for. They're almost the unicorns now in the industry, in areas like ours. I'm sure that there's some in certain areas of the country that people don't really want to be in as investors. But there's a great area here in Northwest Indiana, and we're also in Pensacola, Florida. We have some deals that might be coming up in that area as well. Maybe a little bit higher price point, but a little higher rent, and maybe a little bit less maintenance, a little less cost on some of the other things. But I think appreciation. I love Florida in the long term. For things. So we're definitely trying to make it happen for our investors here. Anything, why don't you just give a little bit quick blurb about what you can offer investors and how you work with so many of our investors?
So I do, main focus is conventional financing. So allowing an investor to get up to 10 loans per individual. So if a married couple, if they structure it properly, could get 20 conventional loans between the two of them. And I understand self-employment. So when you have an investor that's self-employed, there's no concerns of how they're going to be able to calculate my income accurately. So I've done enough of those types of deals to know how to read self-employment and how to manage it so that the underwriter is not going to argue with me. And we do cash out for refinances for the investor that wants to buy it cash and turn around and do a cash out refinance so they could take the equity back out and go into the next property. One thing that I like that you guys are doing now is when you have somebody that's buying the property cash and they're buying it that hasn't been completely renovated, but encompassing the renovation purchase price into one makes my life easier because now I meet the Fannie and Freddie guidelines, and then I can get them to recoup all their cash up front and we don't have to wait 6 months. So that's a huge factor. And then it also looks better for the appraiser because they're saying, okay, he bought it for, say it's $40,000 for the property and $30,000 in renovations. He's seeing it as it was purchased for 70,000, not 40. And then he's not going to give as much scrutiny on it because of the lower purchase price. So that helps out too as well, and making it easier for the investor to be able to turn and burn the money so that they could continue to move on to the next one once they cash out refinance this one.
Yeah, so it's amazing the things that you learn over years of doing things, and hundreds of deals that we've done for our clients. But basically, I just want to let everybody know that I appreciate everything that you do for us. And I think that you do a good job for our investors, and our investors like working with you, and appreciate you coming on today and giving a little bit about what you do. But if you guys didn't hear that, really, like, he's one of our preferred lenders. This is somebody that we say when you're on the phone with Jared and you ask us, hey, do you have any lenders you can hook us up with? We normally hook you up with about 2 or 3 different lenders, and he is always one of them. Jerry's always one of the people that we say, hey, this is somebody that we would recommend as one of the people. We don't want to have an exclusivity with one particular person. We want people to have some kind of choices. But it's funny because Jerry actually knows one of our other preferred lenders as well, Aaron, and they both kind of know each other. Aaron actually came from prime lending and understands like that whole part of the business from where Jerry sits as well. But we like them both, and we do business with them both. And we've had really good luck with many different, or I should say, like I said, about 3 different lenders that we've used over the years. And that's who we like to work with. But Jerry does a great job, especially on the single family homes. And you do offer, I'm assuming, the typical Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans, like 1 to 4 type of deals. Is that the main bread and butter? Are you guys doing portfolio loans? Are you guys doing anything else like small multis? Or is it really pretty much the bread and butter, single family 1 to 4 units?
Yeah, that's basically our main focus, is the 1 to 4 units. They try to get some portfolio lenders into the flow, but I haven't seen them wanting to go anything above the 1 to 4. So
gotcha.
It's just that main focus of the 1 to 4 unit.
So like you said, if you're purchasing or if you're refinancing, which works perfect with our programs, the turnkey program or the active turnkey program here at Olson Group, give Jerry a call, give him a shot, and try to see what you can make happen.
Yeah, it does help to have somebody that when you're trying to build portfolios like we're doing, it definitely helps to have different service providers that can bring value and that you can trust is going to take care of people when you send them their way. And so, no, I appreciate, like Tom said, I appreciate what you do for me personally, helping me with my portfolio, assisting me there, but also for our clients and trying to do what's best for them individually. And so I appreciate that. And so before we shut down, we do have an event coming up here in just a few weeks. And
I'm not sure when this is going to come up, but September 30th through October 2nd, we have an event called the Real Estate Free for All, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to give you lots of time to network, and we're going to have a couple different, but each evening is going to be just filled with food and having fun. One night we're even going to do like horror stories and not like horror stories like Halloween, but like house horror stories when you walk into a mess. And we're gonna give $100 gift card out to whose story is the worst. And
it's gotta be real.
We're gonna have it's gotta be real.
Okay.
Don't give me this fake junk, because it better be something that really happened to you. But so we're gonna do that. We're gonna have fun. We've got a bunch of different speakers that are going to be speaking, and more of the information is on our website. So if you go to goodsuccess.com, you'll be able to find out more of the speakers. We have a girl talking about negotiations. Airbnbs, shed houses. I focus a little bit more on the investment side this time. Every year it's a little different. And something that's been something I've tried to pique my interest this year is crypto. So I even have a guy that's going to come and speak about crypto. But also on the other end of things, I feel like crypto is a very risky part of somebody's portfolio. It's at-risk capital is what I would call it. On the other side, we also have a guy coming and speaking about precious metals. So like, I think those are extreme opposites when it comes to, and I feel like they all fit into a real estate investor's portfolio. I really do believe that. Again, we have lots of different speakers, Mobile Homes, Glenn Stromberg, one of my good friends. Jared's actually going to be a speaker this year. I'm excited. Adam Burrow is speaking, Glenn Stromberg speaking, Tom Berry is speaking. And a lot of other people. You'll find out more information about them on our website, goodsuccess.com. It's free to attend, but I need you to get a ticket. So just click on the link there at goodsuccess.com and find out more information about that. Before we go, I'd love for you to give the audience, Jerry, your information and how people might be able to get in touch with you if they're looking to do some kind of loan, if they need a refi or if they need to get a loan for a rental.
So the easiest way to reach me is on my cell phone, and that's at 585-204-6923. Or if they would prefer to email, they could reach me at jerry.padilla@primelending.com.
And that's Padilla. Can you spell that out?
Padilla.
Padilla.com. So reach out to Jerry one more time on that phone number.
585-204-6923.
We'll make sure Amelia puts the numbers right there at the bottom, like flashing, like a
hopefully
commercial.
You can do that, Amelia, for us. She edits those videos for us.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Jerry, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And for all of you listening, hope this brought some value as we kind of give you an update on what's happening currently in the market. And if you thought this brought you value, give us thumbs up, share, like, 4 or 5 stars, whatever you think it is.
100 stars.
We'll take all the stars.
Give us all the stars.
Yeah.
But really, I think the most important thing you could do is tell a friend about us. Really, absolutely. Like just face to face. Hey, have you ever checked out the Active Turnkey podcast? The best way to buy rentals. We really try to get into the nuts and bolts of things and not just give you all the fluff like a lot of other podcasts do. And we try to really bring amazing content. Plus, we are the funniest podcast you will have out there in the real estate space. Plus, service. Jared makes me look good sometimes, like Melissa makes Jerry look good sometimes.
Yeah, we're a full service podcast. That's what this is.
There you go.
You got that right. So after the millions of views and the people that are going to see this podcast, I don't know if we're going to be able to sell any houses to anybody because we have so many buyers that want to buy our houses. But we do build rental portfolios for investors. Just want to put that out there.
That's right. And if you want to get on our list for that, you can reach me at jared@biolsongroup.com, or you can go to our website at biolsongroup.com. You can add yourself to our list, and you can get in our emails, and we'll send you information about who we are and what we do. And but thank you for joining us. Active Turnkey,
the best way to buy rentals. God bless.
Thanks, guys.
Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.